Us again, breaking news, Infowars.com.
And welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm your host, Jakari Jackson. This is the Overdrive segment, the fourth hour. Now, I have a lot of hot news for you here today. There's many things that we want to discuss. We want to talk about what's going on at the DNC. We want to talk about terror attacks. We want to talk about media and propaganda. But first, we want to talk about the exact opposite of that. We're going to talk about Operation Sleeping Giant. That's going to be our 28-hour broadcast that starts tomorrow, 11 a.m. Central, with the Alex Jones Show. Now, to tell you about this is a fundraiser. This is a huge sale. You can get a lot of great products for a great discount. You can get Brain Force for 40% off, Survival Shield X2 for 20% off, also Super Male Vitality 20% off, and that's just the beginning. So when you tune in, you can see Alex, of course. You're going to see myself, Leanne McAdoo, David Knight, Joe Biggs, Darren McBreen, everybody here in the crew, as well as many special guests. I know Leanne has a special guest. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to talk about it yet, but I'll say it's a rather smashing interview that should be rather impactful if you happen to be walking through a pumpkin patch, and I'll leave that at that. Also, audio guy, can you take my voice out of my head, please? Thank you so much. All right. So with that said, I personally will be on the air from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m., and this is going to be tomorrow. Also, I'll be back at 2:30 a.m. with Margaret Howell, and 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. with Gerald Celente, or more accurately, he'll be hosting the show, and I'll be riding shotgun with him. So you can tune in and see all that coming up tomorrow. You definitely do not want to miss it. It's a great opportunity not only to see the show, but also to support the broadcast, and it's your contributions, it's your support that make everything possible. Because this room I'm sitting in right now, when I first started here 4 years ago, this was just a basic room. It looked like a regular office building. This is where the reporters were stationed, the producers were stationed, and now it's this big, massive studio. And it's your contributions, your support that make this broadcast possible. So thank you, and definitely keep that in mind when it comes to tomorrow. Now, let's get into some other news. And we're going to talk about, you guys remember the Center for Medical Progress. They're the group that were putting out the Planned Parenthood videos. They were going in, filming these people, getting them to say that, or allowing them to say more accurately that they plan to use the proceeds from these abortions to buy Lamborghinis, all types of atrocious things that were going on with that. Now we see that the last charge has been dismissed against the duo who made the anti-Planned Parenthood videos. And this is a report from CBS. It says a district judge dismissed the tampering with government records charge upon request of the Harris County Prosecutor's Office. And now the thing about this is it's a kill the messenger kind of society, whether you're talking about Snowden or Assange or Bradley Manning. And of course, in some cases, they put out maybe more information than they should have as far as government secrets with Bradley Manning and things to that nature. But it's still, let's go after the person who put out the information, not the people who are actually doing the deeds. It's the same thing that we see with the Center for Medical Progress, because we see that initially Texas authorities, they were doing an investigation of Planned Parenthood with the fetal tissue and all the things that they had going on. And then they dropped that to go after these guys. But fortunately, their last charge has been dropped because they were charging them, what was it, with tampering with documents, fraudulent documents. Basically, they were saying that they entered the facilities with a fake ID or something to that sort, and they wanted to charge them for misleading people by using a fake ID. I'm like, okay, so let's say for the sake of argument they did do that. They're in a facility exposing how people are using proceeds from fetal tissue to go buy Lamborghinis, and you don't see anything wrong with that. But thus is society. But granted, they did drop it, dismiss it. So good job to those guys over there at the Center for Medical Progress. And from what I understand, they actually had more videos, so they had more stuff that they wanted to release that just wasn't released for whatever reason. Now, stay tuned after this break. We'll have more special reports. We'll have some clips from the guys at the DNC. I have some stuff about terror attacks, about media propaganda, how they're running the spin cycle in overdrive to just to confuse you, to manipulate you, to get you to believe their narrative. Meanwhile, there are real, true stories that are going on that aren't getting exposed because of all this bull. So stay tuned right after this for more special reports. And welcome back to the fourth hour. This is the Alex Jones Show, and I am your host, Jakari Jackson. Now, let's talk about the terror attacks that are going on worldwide. It seems that there's just no end in sight. You know, you get one, then you get another one, then you get another one, then you get another one. And everybody wants to talk about the violence here in the United States. And yes, we do have a violence problem, whether it's the citizens or the police. Police are citizens too, I understand that, but I'm trying to make that distinction here. But you also have legitimate terror attacks that are going on the other side of the planet that people really don't want to give much credence to. And as Paul Joseph Watson was discussing earlier with his guest, as bad as these things are, the priest who got beheaded recently, next week people are just going to forget all about it. It's going to be like it never even happened. And that's the very sad thing about these type of attacks. Let's start here with this article. French terrorist suspect beheading the priest, or suspected of beheading the priest, was allowed to roam unsupervised. And it turns out one of the attackers who killed and beheaded a 86-year-old Catholic priest was a convicted terrorist. Now, the thing I want to point out in this article, great article by Kurt Nimmo, is that this man is a convicted terrorist, not even a suspected terrorist, a convicted terrorist, and they were basically putting him under house arrest with an ankle monitor. It blows my mind that they would do this with a suspected terrorist, because I used to work in a jail, and the people who got ankle monitors were like maybe a purse snatcher or somebody who stole some stuff at Walmart, just really petty offenses that nobody got hurt in. This guy is a known terrorist, but they are going to put him basically on the honor system and say, please stay home with your parents. Don't go out and kill anybody so we can keep you under surveillance. The man's a known terrorist, and you expect him not to cut off that ankle monitor. But this is the type of world we live in. And Nimmo points out, the attack occurred despite extraordinary surveillance and police state measures imposed on the country following the attacks in Paris in November and an earlier attack on Charlie Hebdo. So as we see these attacks continue to happen against a largely disarmed populace, and every time it happens, they're just like, oh, we didn't know how this happened. We're so surprised. We're so shocked. I'm like, well, they keep happening, and they keep happening, and they keep happening. At what point are you going to realize that you have a problem with the terrorist in your country? But this is a more straightforward article than I've seen in other places, because at least they're admitting that these terror attacks are happening. I covered this article last week and I have it pulled up here. This is a CNN whitewash. And this is why, a case in point example, why I don't go off press releases, because we go to these events and you get one from a senator or from a congressman or the police, and they say, we want you to regurgitate this to your viewers and tell them our version of what happened. And as I can tell you from being on the scene in many of these examples, situations, scenarios around the country, what the police report says, what the press release says, isn't always exactly that accurate. And this is one of those reasons. Rebels in Syria call boys beheading a mistake. So basically the Western-backed Syrian rebels, which we've been funding, aiding, arming, making excuses for, we continue to make excuses for, because a group of rebels, Syrian rebels, quote unquote, many of them have sworn their allegiance to Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations, but let's not go too deep into that. They went into a village and they rounded up a group of men that they said were anti-fighters, were fighting against them. One of the people that they rounded up was a little boy, which in CNN's own report could have been as young as 10 years old. They then proceeded to saw the boy's head off with a knife. And the gentleman you see on your screen right there is a representative from the State Department. And he's like, well, we'll look into it, and we're allowing the Syrian rebels to investigate themselves. And at one point, a reporter jumps up. He says, Mr. State Department man, if it comes out that it is true and accurate that your Western-backed Syrian rebels did cut this boy's head off, will you stop your funding to the Syrian rebels? And that gentleman right there, he said, quote, it would give us pause. It would give us pause if we found out the Syrian rebels that saw somebody's head off, a little boy's head off on video, it would give us pause to continue to fund them. Not we're going to stop funding them, not we're going to go attack them, not anything else. It would give us pause to think about it in such a way. And the rebels who did the killing of the young man, the little boy, they said it was an individual mistake. That is a quote, is a individual mistake, that they held a boy down and cut his head off. And then they had the heads at CNN just regurgitate the talking, the press release. And I'd like to think that the person who wrote this article didn't like it. They were just trying to, play it straight down the middle. But there's times you just can't do that, because the news is so egregious. And I would not want to vouch for the people who made this quote mistake, or the State Department who came out with just a very milquetoast, lackluster response to this very sinister crime. And this isn't anything new, because as we've pointed out, whether it's Syrian rebels or other groups, the the people who just killed the priest the other day. These attacks continue to happen. They've been happening for a very long time, but they're just now starting to get the media attention that they deserve. We've given you several articles, Paul Joseph Watson leading the charge on that, about these groups that are going into villages, they're killing the priests, they're burning down the churches, they're knocking down the monuments, and so on and so on and so on. And this has been going on for a number of years, but as I said, it's just now starting to get some traction in the media. And as we talk about the media propaganda machine, one of the things that's really hot and heavy right now is trying to blame Russia for the hacks at the DNC. And Assange has come out and countered this, and he says it's nothing but media propaganda. And this article from the site, the establishment media has virtually ignored the revelations contained in the WikiLeaks DNC email hack and has instead pushed the accusation Russia is attempting to influence the U.S. election. On Monday, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange told NBC News there's no proof whatsoever his outfit received the 20,000 plus DNC emails from the Russians. The real story is what these emails contain, and they show collusion at the top of the Democratic Party to derail Sanders' campaign, he said. And in a very similar way, it reminded me of the Sony hack. You guys recall that hack that was supposedly done by North Korea because of the movie The Interview. You know, it was just so offensive that they had to hack into Sony's server and stop this movie from coming out. But if you recall, I have this throwback article, FBI busted falsely blaming North Korea for Sony hack. And this is what I was talking about with the media manipulation, whether it's with the Russians or somebody else, there's always some boogeyman out there. And this article says, here's a sample of top cybersecurity experts who say that North Korea was not behind the Sony hack. And we have Peter Singard. He's one of the nation's foremost experts in cybersecurity, renowned hacker and DEF CON organizer, Mark Rogers, John Dixon, former Air Force intelligence officer, cyber risk consulting company, risk-based security, Kim Zetter, who works for Wired, and on and on and on the list goes. But once again, they tell you that it was North Korea. They tell you that it's the Russians because those are the boogeymen at the time. By no means making excuses for those people. All those groups have various issues and things that need to be dealt with. But I'm one of those people, you blame the person who actually did the crime. You don't say, I don't like this person, so I'm going to pin something else on them, because it'd be a situation, say a bank robbery, for example, right? So you don't know who did the bank robbery, but you know Joe down the street, he's a bad character, bad actor, been up to some stuff all these years, and then you go blame it on him. Well, even if you are happy you got Joe off the street, you still got the guys who actually robbed the bank running around free and easy, and they're not looking over their shoulder because they know that nobody is looking for them. And those are the type of things that you have to deal with when you go through the media cycle. It's all types of things, all types of propaganda, things you have to deal with, the lies, the disinformation, just as we were talking about with the Syrian rebels beheading the boy. It's a complete spin cycle. And then somebody was showing me this article earlier today. I forgot to print it out. But there was the attack of the Syrian man with the suicide bomb. He went to some music festival. I can't recall exactly where it was. Blew himself up, injured 15 or so people. And then the whitewash article was a Syrian rebel or Syrian refugee was killed in a bomb blast. I'm like, that is technically accurate, but you left out the part where he assembled the bomb and then blew himself up. Oh, there it is. You guys got it right there. So yeah, they try to spin it and make it seem like he was the victim. He's a victim of his own stupidity, I guess you could say, but he blew himself up on purpose. So I don't see how you could spin that. But this is just the political correctness, the world we live in, where they say Syrian migrant dies in German blast. I'm like, bro, you kind of killed yourself in that situation. And these are the things that they want you to believe, the whitewashes that go on out there. This is why you have to have a very well-rounded view of the news. And get your news from multiple sources, because not everybody's going to be right all the time. So I do encourage people to go to various sources, look around at different articles on different sites, see what New York Times says versus Washington Post versus whoever, and try to see, are there consistencies, or in some cases they just do the straight talking point thing. Like they'll get something from Reuters or AP or whatever else, and they'll just rebrand it, just put their own headline on it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if different people are writing it, try to see if there are other angles and aspects to it. Case in point, when you talk about the 1993 World Trade attack, 1993, they wanted to blame it on the guy, but he said, no, I have the tapes. I have the tapes of me talking to the FBI. Many people didn't know that until the guy